Rosensweig show. This series is called Parsha and Prose, and I am doing it together with my dear friend, the very auspicious Rabbi Shlomo Gomorrah. How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem, thank you very much. How are you, Avrum? How was your
Yeah.
week?
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you so much. How was your week?
Baruch Hashem, but my mind right now is with the people of Israel. As
Yes.
we speak, there are many rockets that landed and maybe on their way. Hopefully, Hashem will divert it, but Israel needs our prayers right now.
Amen. Now, you yourself have actually fought in Lebanon. Is that correct?
I did. I was in Lebanon for a few months of my life. Such a beautiful country, I have to tell you. For me, at Israel, it was the first time that I was in Chutz La'aretz, outside the borders of Israel. And it happened that actually our base was under the cedars of Lebanon. And this was one of the most magnificent views that I remember until this very day. These unbelievable, majestic trees. You look up and up and up. They have beautiful shape, number one, and they are just humongous. It's unbelievable. Even years later, when I was in California in the redwood forest, still the cedars of Lebanon left on me a huge impression. And the mountain, the ravines, everything was so beautiful, especially when we entered and we did not have to fear yet the Shiites and the war. It was just a mechai. I remember like walking on Friday in the market of Tzidon. Like we were not afraid of anything. And it was just beautiful.
May I ask you what you did in the army?
I belong to a unit of parachuters in what is called Gdud Hamishim. It's a special unit in the Tzanchanim because it's the people who are going to this unit are people who are combining working in kibbutzim and moshavim and being in the army. One of my commanders, by the way, maybe is well known today to the listeners, is Benny Gantz. He was a commander, by the way, very nice guy. But I would add also that then I wouldn't believe for one second that he would be even a candidate to a prime minister. He was a wonderful guy, but not these qualities of a prime minister, I must say. But extremely nice guy.
What effect did being in the army, fighting in a war, what effect did that have on you throughout your life?
Um, I think I understand better what does it mean to be an Israeli. You spend many years of your life in the army. Afterwards, um, in Miluim, in the reserve. I remember when I was 40, with 6 kids, I got a mail from Tzahal that I was let go from the Miluim, and I protested it. I went to an interview with my commander, um, Lieutenant General, and I said, no, I want to stay. I think it's very, very important. And he said, Shlomo, 6 kids is the highest service to the Jewish people. Um, I don't know if he was right or not, but I, it gives you something very meaningful. I think it's a merit, it's a zchut to be a soldier, and I felt that I do my duty to our nation.
At some point, excuse me, during your time in Lebanon, I believe you lost 10 friends. Is that correct?
Even more.
Even more. Can
Um,
you?
Many people that I went through especially the beginning. I started in a tank unit. I really hated it, and it was very not my temper. It's a very different kind of service, but all the people that I actually a tank driver license, licensed a tank driver, but I hated it. To be honest with you, I really wanted to be in the open space, and they moved to a different unit, to a parachuting a battalion. And many of my friends from the tank unit, they were killed in Lebanon in an infamous battle that is called Sultan Yaqub. This was an ambush of the Syrian commando, and my friends were caught in the valley, in the mountains on left and right. They were hit by Russian missiles, and I wish it would be only 10, but it was something above 30 people. At least 16 of them I knew personally. They were my friends who never came back home.
Rabbi, before we launch into our shiur, our class today, can you tell us about one of those friends, their character, who they were?
I will tell you about one that we don't know what happened to him. And this is Yehuda Katz, that I knew since I was in grade 9. And then we went to the same yeshiva together. And before their unit went on the bus, I spent about an hour with him learning Talmud. Now, he came from a very regular family. In grade 9, no one of us saw anything special about him. But as he grew up, and it happened many times for teenagers, he became so serious. And when he went to the yeshiva, he spent so much time in learning and refining his personality. Was such a fine person, and his relationship with God were evident on his face. You know, these people that you can see, they have special relationship with God. He was one of them.
Yes.
So we, as a group, we were recruited from the yeshiva. We were in the yeshiva. Buses arrived in the second day of the Lebanon war, and they just told us to pack it. Everything was ready for us because the way in Tzal, all your equipment is waiting for you when you arrive to the bases. And before we just left, you know, people could make a phone call to their parents. Remember, this is before the cell phones. We are talking about 83. So we had in the yeshiva 2 telephone units. And if you remember, the Simon that you put inside, and calling the parents, and that was it. From the yeshiva directly to the army base not far away from Afula. And as I said, on the night between Thursday to Friday, on the first week of the Lebanon war, they were ambushed in a terrible way. His tank was abandoned when he was inside. Clearly, he was injured, but no one knows if he was more than that or not. Let me run forward a few years later. There is a video where the Syrian crowd is having a tank of the IDF led in a victory parade of the Syrian in the middle of Damascus. Unclear and very grain picture shows someone on the tank. And from here on, no one knows what happened to Yehuda Katz. Was he killed and buried? Was not killed? Until this very moment, we say every Shabbat, all the friends, tefillah for the shavui. We don't say it for the person who was killed. I kept very close connection with his parents. Zichronam livracha, they are not alive anymore. Their life obviously turned upside down completely. They devoted every moment of their time in life to try and to find even information about him. It came to the point where on billboard in South Lebanon, where Tzal is today, where his pictures and awards to everyone that is going to give some information about Yehuda Katz. But nothing happened. Nothing happened. And until this very moment, we know nothing about his fate.
Is he a pivotal character in your thinking, in your life?
If he's a
Pivotal. Is he, we always respond based on relationships that we develop in life, some of which are so powerful. And
um,
Yehuda
he
Katz's
was
life.
he was when I want to think about what teenager can achieve, I think about Yehuda Katz.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay. Okay.
To me, the role model. Listen, I have to be honest. We all, after the war, got married very quickly. War caused you to rethink about your life and the purpose of your life. Most of us continued in education, more or less, as rabbis, as teachers, and so on. But I cannot say that he was a person that changed my life. But certainly one of the people that over my life I think a lot about what he means to me. I would say that for sure.
Have you mentioned him to your students?
Many times.
You have.
Many
Okay.
times.
Okay.
Yeah.
He should rest in peace. And Rabbi, we should give the zchut of our learning today towards the neshama of Yehuda Katz.
So again, until this moment, we don't know if he was killed or not. Most likely he was. The army itself and the authorities of the army, the IDF, believe that he was killed. There are some evidence that he was killed. I have to tell you, it's not to explain at this point, because when the other friends, also my friends, left the tank, um, he was wounded. To what degree we don't know, because as you might imagine, everyone just ran away for his life. Because the Syrian commando came very close to the tank, so everyone had to rescue himself, and especially because he was in the tank, he was also a tank driver. I could be in this tank also. That's a scary thought that I think many times, and we don't know exactly if he died or not, if he died later or not, if he's still alive or not. Well, statistics, probability dictate that he apparently not with us anymore, but even the IDF never attached the Zichrono Livracha to his name.
I as you mentioned Yehuda Katz and his parents, excuse me, I think about Yaakov Avinu, who never knew up until a certain point if his son Yosef was alive or dead. And I have often thought about the suffering that Yaakov and parents would go through with that lack of knowledge. If they're dead, there's closure. You say Kaddish. If they're not dead, you go visit them, right? I can only imagine what his parents went through.
This is the worst nightmare. And these parents, they lived in Ramat Gan, such a fine people. Both of them were Holocaust survivors, Hungarian Holocaust survivors. And something very interesting, about 5 years ago, when I came to Israel, in the airport, I meet someone else and he said, "Are you coming to the Levaya of the father of Yehuda Katz?" I said, well, did he pass away? I did not know that. And from the airport, I flew to Har HaMenuchot, where the Levaya was. It was like from Shamayim, they directed me to go to the Levaya of this person that really suffered enormously, exactly as you say, like Yaakov Avinu, but with no happy end. Maybe now in Shamayim they meet each other, but every moment of their life for 40 years was just a nightmare. Just a nightmare.
Okay, folks, today in our share, if you could have in mind Yehuda Katz and his parents and all of those who fought in Lebanon and those who are fighting in Gaza, we send out our brachot, our blessings to them. And we need to be strong as Jews here in diaspora. Part of that is our learning of Torah, and we will send out the energy of our learning today to the IDF soldiers and to their families. The show is called the Avrum Rosensweig Show. The series is called Parsha Prose, and it is sponsored by the Professional Center. You can see their website at the bottom, theprofessionalcenter.com. It's a very cool place which offers a co-working environment. So if you need a place for a day or a week or a month or what have you, you can actually lease some of their space. And it's very, very beautiful. I actually just want to take a moment to show you about how they've designed it. Let's take just a quick look here. 1 second. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. It's a small picture. We'll go a little bit larger here. Yeah, it's absolutely stunning. So, you know what? Give them a call. And the cool thing is, if you use my name, Avrum, I like the way you say that, Rabbi Gomorrah, that you'll get 10% off on certain spaces. The other thing, too, I'd like to mention is that this podcast really survives and grows, predicated on sponsorship and donations. And I would ask you, please, if you like it, then be in touch with me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. Our goal really is to pat humankind on the back and to recognize that there is such beauty within us and around us, and our potential to grow as Jews, as human beings, is enormous. I truly believe that through inspiration of others who have done magnificent jobs in their lives, that we can come closer to peace in the world, brotherhood and sisterhood. So be conscious of that and recognize that this is a task which does require time and money. And once again, if you can be in touch with me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. Anything to add to that, Rabbi, before we go to the Parsha?
You know what? The interesting thing, I met a former student of mine, and he said, Rabbi Gemara, from time to time, I really enjoyed this podcast.
Yeah.
And I asked him, why don't you give me a good feedback or a like? He said, I'll be honest with you, I never see it on YouTube. I hear it in the podcast on my way to work. And that's actually the moment I understood that we have more listeners than just the number of views on YouTube. So I'm not that familiar with all the other platforms, but people should know that there are people who, for some reason, unknown to me, they really enjoyed it and they are inspired by our podcast, and they
I'm so
come again
excited.
and again.
Well, Rabbi, where do former students sit in your heart? What's your relationship to them?
Um, I always tell them once student, it's like the tzanchanim. In the tzanchanim, the motto is Pam tzanchen, tamid tzanchen. Once you were a parachuter, you always be a parachuter. Which tells you something about, like, once you are part of a family, you will always be
Yeah.
part of the family. And with students, I feel quite the same. I think I told you once, my greatest achievement in my eyes is that I was invited to officiate more than 100 weddings of my students, former students, people that sometimes I didn't see for 5 and 6 years, and they call me and say, Rabbi Mark, would you honor us to officiate you? I said, to honor you, you honor me. And it means that we form kind of relationship, and they want me to be there in an important moment of their life. And to me, that's the greatest achievement, not like how much Torah I taught them and how many commentators I explained. It's about the relationship that a rabbi forms with his students. And to me, it's the greatest thing. And from time to time, I'm amazing myself. I even remember the name and the parent, and I ask the students how your parents are doing. It's a wonderful feeling. It's a
And,
wonderful feeling because it's really a relationship for life.
and it's interesting because the Torah talks about kavod, honor for a parent, kibbut aviyim. It's one of the Aseret Dibrot, the Ten Commandments. But it also talks extensively about kavod and a relationship one has with their Rebbe, with their rabbi, with their teacher.
Absolutely. And, there is a famous law that if your rabbi lost an object and your father lost an object, actually you have to deal more extensively with the lost item of your rabbi rather than your father. And the reason given in the Talmud is because he brought you to this world, but the rabbi is bringing you to the next world.
Nice.
Um,
Very nice.
well, listen, as I always tell my students, if your father lose something and I lose something, please deal with your father first.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't think that I'm the rabbi that the Talmud meant that I bring them to the next world. But you are absolutely right. The Torah sees the continuity. You know, we talk a lot about continuity, but how continuity is formed by parents and by teachers. And if you lack respect to your parents or your teachers, you endanger the future, not less than that.
You know, and if you take a look at some of the teacher student relationships in the Gemara, you'll see how powerful they are. And to look at the extreme, Rav Meir was the student of Elisha ben Avuya, who we called Acher in sort of a pejorative way. Acher was one of the writers of the Talmud, but he went off, as they say, the derech. He gave up his Judaism. Yet, Rav Meir, his student, had respect for him, continued to. And when Elisha ben Avuya passed, when he died, he followed the not the kever. He followed the casket to the place where he would be buried, even though there was smoke apparently coming out of it. What a powerful relationship that was.
Absolutely. This deserve not one podcast but few podcasts about the Elisha ben Avuya, a person that actually was maybe the first one to see a Holocaust, a great thinker who saw a Holocaust in front of his eyes. We have to remember the time he lived in, and it shaped his religious world. And I think that the student Rabbi Meir understood it. It came not from a malicious, just like throwing away everything he learned, because he was so sure about the principles of belief and faith that he preached to others. When he saw the devastation of Israel, of the people of Israel, who suffered enormously. As I say, this was like a precursor to what happened in the Holocaust, and it indeed happened after the Holocaust too. He lost his belief. He could not reconcile what he saw and the beliefs he had. And we saw things like this after the Holocaust, and no one in the world can judge or criticize a person who saw what he saw in the Holocaust and lost his faith.
Have you met people like that?
I met many.
How did you respond to them?
With a hug. You know what? You cannot say a word. These people went through something that no Jew can imagine. I'm talking about the physical suffering, about the emotional suffering, about the religious suffering. How can we judge them? How can we judge them? These are people that I'm sure got the ticket, when they go upstairs after 120. I'm sure that the next hug they get is from the Ribono Shel Olam. So when I hug these people, I just felt that this was like in this world, but when they are going to come to the next world, like God himself is going to hug them.
Nicely said.
Yeah.
All right, folks. We are learning Netzavim Yayelech. It's 2 parshiot this week. It's the one before Rosh Hashanah, and it has very few psukim, very few lines in it, about 70. And that is considered small, especially when you combine 2 portions of the Torah together. Let me tell you a little bit about Netzavim-Va'yelech, and we are learning it today through the lens of Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. We'll tell you about that too. The Torah portion of Netzavim and Va'yelech, which I read together on the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, focuses on themes of covenant, responsibility, and renewal. In Netzavim, Moses addresses the Israelites, emphasizing that they stand together before God, reaffirming their commitment to the covenant. He stresses that the choice between life and death, blessing and curse, lies before them, highlighting the importance of personal and communal accountability. Va'yelech continues this message as Moses prepares to pass leadership to Joshua. It's his last day of life, Moses. He encourages the people to be strong and courageous, actually a few times in the Parsha, reminding them that God will be with them. This portion underscores the significance of passing down faith and tradition, urging the community to remain steadfast even in times of tradition, Together, these portions call for introspection and a recommitment to spiritual values as the Jewish New Year approaches. So those are the two parshiot, Crime and Punishment. It was written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, published in 1866 during a very tumultuous time in Russia where there was rapid societal change going on. It's a psychological novel that explores the moral dilemmas faced by its protagonist, Rodion Raskolnikov, a former student living in St. Petersburg. Driven by a belief in his own superiority and a theory that certain individuals are above the law, Raskolnikov commits a brutal murder. This novel delves into his inner turmoil as he grapples with guilt, alienation, and existential despair. Through his interaction with other characters, including the virtuous Sonia and the relentless investigator Porfiry, Raskolnikov confronts the consequences of his actions and the nature of redemption. Dostoevsky intricately weaves themes of morality, free will, and the search for meaning, ultimately posing profound questions about the nature of justice and the human condition. What is it you love about Crime and Punishment? Why did you choose that?
I think it's one of the greatest book ever written.
Yeah, why is that?
I was so captivated by the book when I read it, because again, this is like a classic Russian book with the darkness, but these fine lines that really Dostoevsky, even better than Tolstoy, found a way to describe in words the most secretive feeling that we have. Like it's like describing in trying to describe music with painting. You know, it's very hard. There were some tries to do it, but it's you take one realm and you try to express it in a completely different way. To me, he took psychology and managed to find the deepest part of our soul and mind and to portray it in unbelievable way. Every figure, everything that is happening in this book is just written in such a fine detail that it's to me like mind-boggling.
Yeah,
Now,
please go ahead. Yes.
no, please.
Just in light of what you were saying about his ability to write about our deepest feelings, a couple of quotes. He said, "It is better to be unhappy than to be happy in the wrong way." Would you concur with that?
Listen, we have something very similar in our Tanakh, and I'm pretty sure, by the way, that Dostoevsky knew our Bible very, very well. He was a very devoted Christian. Tov yom hamavet miyom hivaldo, like it's better to die than, or to be dead than to be alive, and many, many things that actually sounds very depressing and encouraging us to look on the darker side of life rather than the brighter side of life. One of the famous quotes I remember from this book is that the more the night is darker, the more the stars in the sky are brighter, something like this. And I think it's very much tell us about the entire writings of Dostoevsky. He, from the darkness of maybe his soul, maybe what he saw through life, he managed to show us the brightest point also of society, of people. I think that he recommended in a way going to these dark places.
Here's another quote. I really want to get your take on this. The only thing that will change the world is the power of love. Are you a big proponent of that?
Absolutely, and I think I mentioned it many, many times. This is when he see actually Sonia, who is portrayed the redeemer in a way, and it gives me an opportunity to speak a little bit about how we see the whole process of teshuva, of atonement, compared to Dostoevsky, because indeed, for a major part of Dostoevsky a book is about guilt. Did you notice like how heavy is the guilt like dawning? Um, eh, in this book, it's like a long journey of guilt, like a guilt trip in its best. We don't have it so much. The reason why the Torah calls us for atonement, for repentance, is very, very different. Is because God loves us, and tshuva by itself telling you a lot. We just returned back to the place where we came from. We are here in this world as a, a fruit of love, not only of man and woman, but also God enabled us to be in this world as an as an act of love, and we just return to it. So we repent not because the guilt that is dawning on us. It's more about returning to the what I called before, like the hug of God of humanity. And this is very, very different from what Dostoevsky portrayed in his book.
Rabbi, what I'm really, really deeply curious about is your take on love, of course, between God and humankind. But I'm also very interested on your take of love towards our fellow man, towards other people. And let me give you a context for this. There's a story told of a young yeshiva bucher who was seen smoking on Shabbat. And his Rebbe saw him and he brought him to the Rosh Yeshiva, the head of the yeshiva. And the Rosh Yeshiva said, "Nu Shleimala, we won't use your name. Nu Aaron, let me ask you a question. You're yeshiva bucher, you come from a frum family, and your Rebbe saw you smoking on Shabbat. What's going on?" And then even more than that, he saw you later going into a church. And I want to know what's going on. So the Bocher said to Rashiv, he says, "I'll tell you something." He said, "I have such a hard time with halacha. And why? It's because I don't know what it's rooted in. When I went into the church, the people in the church, the Christians, embraced me, and they told me that they loved me. And all my time in yeshiva and growing up in the frum world, nobody ever told me that they loved me." And I thought that was such a poignant story because I went to yeshiva too, 5 years at Ner Yisrael in Toronto and 1 year in Sanhedrin, Israel. And I honestly can tell you that that type of love, one person towards another, I can't honestly say I felt that. What's your thought on that?
This is a very difficult story. And I don't know if it really happened, the story that you just told, but as I said, it's a true story. It's a true story. And I think it depends on what yeshiva you are going to. I think that if me and you were in more Hasidic yeshiva, maybe we would talk differently. I have a feeling that in the Hasidic world, love plays much greater role than in the yeshiva that you and me went to, which emphasize more the intellect, who is more like deeper in it. Are we together?
Yeah,
Avrum?
keep going. Yeah, keep going. Yep. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that. We're
Not
gonna
to worry. Not to worry.
Okay, so where to start from?
You said that the yeshivas that we went through, but in
Yeah, so
Hasid,
the issue, yeah. So the yeshiva that we went through admire the intellect, the brightness, the ability to decipher the texts and the codes of the Talmud. And love, well, what love has to do about it? This was the I think the approach of the yeshiva. And indeed, for people who need a little bit more like emotional support to know that someone loves them, Yeshiva, Litvische yeshiva, I would say, can be a terrible experience. And if they don't have good friends that support them emotionally, this might be a ruining experience, I must say, a ruining experience. And yes, obviously, it's very interesting to know. You know what actually helped Christianity to spread so well? It was not just the theology. Many people did not understand the theology. Many people who are Christian don't fully understand the theology until this very day. But from the very beginning of Christianity, one of the greatest assets they had were the nuns and institutions that helped poor people and give them the feeling that they are still loved. And they saw themselves as agents of God, and they deliver this love of God to the people. And this by itself was one of the major causes that Christianity spread all over. People want to feel that they are loved by someone. We never try to convert the world around us, but it's interesting that Christianity was so successful. And as I said, it was not only about theology, it was about love and sympathy to poor and miserable people. We have to know that.
Rabbi, I have to tell you something at the risk of you blushing, but I was just talking to one of your yeshiva bachrim when you were Rosh Yeshiva at Or Chaim, and he told me, and he's not the only one who's told me this, that you were the greatest Rosh Yeshiva, the greatest teacher that they ever had. And I asked him why he said that, and he said because the rabbi really focused on who I was and where I was at and what I needed, and he made me feel loved. So yesher koach to you on having that ability to impart that to your students.
Well, the second part, I would agree. When I talk to any student, I try to see the student, not myself, not what he's supposed to be, but the student himself. Let's focus on him. This is very, very important. And as I told you a few times, I don't just see him. I know that one of his forefathers was Avram. Another one was Yitzchak, and another one was Yaakov, the descendants of the Hashmonaim and the Maccabim. So I know that he came from a very good family. He had the potential and the DNA to be a great one. For the first part, this is his interpretation that I was a good Rosh Yeshiva. I'm not sure about it. And I don't say just, I saw like great people. I cannot compare myself to them in any way or shape. But when I talk to young teachers, I always say that the success in education depends only on one thing. Stop, look at yourself, just focus on the person in front of you, of the student, because you are serving him. And especially for young people, especially talented ones, they want to show the students how smart they are, how much they know. They don't care about it. They don't care how much you know. They just care about one thing. I'm a person, I need support, I need someone to guide me, I need someone to smile to me. And this I try to provide.
When I was doing commercial radio for 10 years, I had to determine, I was on CFRB, Talk 640. I had to determine what a good show was. And I realized at some point in time that I had to look at it in two ways. Number one is, how did I feel about my show? Number two is, how was it accepted by those who were listening? And if I felt as though maybe I didn't do such a good job, but those who were listening felt it was good, that would help me in terms of my own self-judgment. So I would tell you that as far as you being a Rosh Yeshiva, however you feel about yourself, maybe it doesn't matter so much, because your yeshiva bachrim, the ones who were in your shul, in your yeshiva, they thought you were great. So I'm going to leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And as I said, sometimes they really show it in very unexpected way when they invited me to officiate their weddings.
Yeah.
And I'm very touched by it.
Rabbi, we're talking about Netzavim-Va'yelech. We're doing so through the lens of Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. How do both texts address the theme of moral responsibility, particularly in a relationship to community versus individual action?
So, to be honest, crime and punishment focus on the individual. You don't hear much about the community. Certainly, Dostoevsky wrote the book focusing on one person, his family, the people that he met along the way. The Torah, interestingly enough, speak about the community. And remember that Moshe Rabbeinu does not speak to 600,000 males or and the same number of females and the same number of children, maybe, as individuals. He speaks to them as a community. And to me, it's such an amazing way of thinking, because Reb Avrum or Reb Yitzchok or Reb Shloime, it's not about you. You're part of a community. When you sin, you affect the community. It's not only about yourself. And actually, the Torah speaks very little about yourself. The whole Parsha of Netzavim-Va'yelech is talking about the strengths of the community and the responsibility of the community to every single one, and the responsibility of every single one in this community to the entire community. And I see it so different from crime and punishment, who see the idea of sinning and repentance and atonement just something that focus on the individual. By the way, it's very much so in Christianity, which is very, very focused on the one person and not on the church, which means actually the gathering of people. And therefore, people in Brazil and in Russia have nothing in common, actually. They believe maybe in certain theological principles, but they feel nothing towards each other as Christians. That's very different by Jews. We feel that a person who is right now in Israel and might suffer, a soldier that is in the tunnels of Gaza, we all feel his pain. We all pray for her or for him. And the same thing is about sin and punishment. The Torah is not talking about your individual sin. Yes, there are parts in the Torah that talks about what we have to do and what we don't have to do. But this parsha is talking about us as a group. And by the way, we have to remember, why don't we start the cycle of Torah in Rosh Hashanah? This is the Rosh Hashanah. This is the beginning of the year. Shouldn't we start the Torah then? And our sages, the Talmud suggests that actually we end the Torah only 3 weeks later, because the Chachamim were interested that we will listen carefully to this parashot before Rosh Hashanah. And when we approach Rosh Hashanah as a community, the words will resonate with us. We will hear them again and again. We have a responsibility as a community to the covenant between us and God. It's not so much about the individual. Obviously, as individual, we always think, mi lamavet, mi lachaim, mi bamayim, mi ba'esh. Obviously, we have to think about ourselves and our families too. But we approach Rosh Hashanah, we approach the Jewish holidays, always thinking about the community, not ourselves.
But just to clarify, the development of the self is sacrosanct within the Torah as well.
Absolutely. I cannot deny it, and obviously everyone is responsible for himself. But the parshiot, especially of Sefer Dvarim, and especially this parshiot, are very different from crime and punishment, because it's talking about the covenant that was violated. And that the community, the covenant is not only between every individual and God, it's about the Jewish community and God. And when we veer, when we do something as individuals wrong, we weaken this connection that the community has through the covenant with God. So it's about the community.
In Netzavim, the Israelites are presented with a choice between life and death. How does this concept compare to Raskolnikov's choice to commit murder?
The issue of choice and free will is a very complicated one. It's a complicated principle in Jewish thought, and even the Rambam, the greatest intellectual ever, in Jewish thought, and the discussion about free will. This is something so deep and so profound that the human mind cannot grasp it entirely. You have to remember that this is way more complicated by the Christian thought, which is behind crime and punishment, because the Christianity believe in the original sin, that actually when we born to this world, we are actually sinners and we need atonement, and you can get your atonement only by believing in, we are very different in it. And for us, we believe that actually we were born pure and with a great potential to achieve the highest degrees. No sin is actually drag us down. And this is a very different way to look on life. Are we sinners, or are we great people that sometimes stray and looking in the wrong places? And therefore, the whole idea of teshuva is very, very different from what Raskolnikov is going through and what the Torah wants us as Jews to going through. I'm not sure that I answered your question in full, but I think it's important to see this is a major difference.
Yet, if I'm not mistaken, there's a dynamic within the Torah about how an individual is born. I believe there's a pasuk that says we're born, as you say, we were born pure. But there's another pasuk, and I can't remember where, that says we're not born. We're born bad.
Yetzer lev ha'adam ra
Right.
mineuav. And I'm not sure that they are contradicting each other. I think what does it say is that God created a very balanced world. You are not going to get anything for free. You will have to work to purify yourself and to be part of this holy covenant between the Jewish people and God, or an individual and God. So God created this balance between our unlimited potential to reach heights, but God wants us to be challenged. He wants us to feel good about our achievements. And indeed, from the moment we are born, we have something to balance our desire to go back to God and to live in a world which is, sometimes pushes us to a different direction, and we have to go over it and to purify ourselves through our life. So yes, the fact that Hashem gave us this, what we call Yetzer Hara and bad inclination, is just a balancing act of the greatness that we have, that if it wouldn't be balanced, we would just not be in this world and want to be always with God. That make us very ineffective people.
Rabbi, I think Dostoevsky wanted to show the concept of a Superman, if you will, through Raskolnikov. It's the idea that I can rise above morality, and therefore I'm going to show that by committing a murder, and ultimately ask you, Raskolnikov committed 2 murders. Would that be at all similar? Tell me, do you agree with that? And number 2 is that at all similar to a biblical character, as an example, Korach, who came before Moshe Rabbeinu, and in essence, by challenging him, he was trying to put himself above God as well. Is there any parallel there?
So let's start from the second part. Raskolnikov, at the end that you mentioned, committed double crime. He killed the lady that he planned to kill, and then her sister Elizabeth,
her half sister, I think. Yeah.
And I think this is very much in line of what Chachamim said, Aveira goreret Aveira. Sometimes you do one Aveira and you can live with one Aveira somehow, but you don't know what are the implications and what it's going to drag you towards. So here, the person who did it because he wanted to make the world better, as he thought, obviously completely wrong. But he could not imagine that actually this will push him to the second murder of the sister who comes to visit her sister. So this idea of Avera Goreret Avera resonate with me very, very well. Chachamim saw it too. Like you plan to do one Avera, but you don't know that down the road some other are waiting just to their turn. This is number one. Number two is the higher moral, which I didn't know if to take it as an irony or not, or maybe that's the reality. We sometimes think that we understand the world better than anyone else, and it's kind of hubris, kind of over purity. I don't know what it is exactly, but I think that all of us know people that sometimes present themselves on such a moral degree, and actually they are completely corrupt from inside. And interestingly enough, this also resonates with me like something in the Talmud. You know, the Torah said, "Ish kitistei ishto." When the Torah talks about like bad relationship in the family and the wife cheated on her husband, the Torah used a very unusual word, "Ish kitistei ishto," which corresponding in Hebrew to she will do a foolish thing. Shtuyot, shote in Hebrew means a foolish person, a silly person. And Chachamim say that when a person is actually committing a sin, it's because there is a spirit, like a foolishness that run over him and over his mind and pushes him to do this avera. And what is this ruach shtut? What is this like a spirit of foolishness? I think this is you start to decide and to shape the world according to your morals, and you think that you are smarter and better and more moral than other people, and this will push you to the worst crimes that a human being can do, like what happened to Raskolnikov. And again, I think that the dynamics of the sin are very similar to what Chachamim saw when a person is committing a sin. It's putting himself in a moral system which is very different and many times negating the true moral system that was created by God Himself.
What I find fascinating in what you just said is that I think you were saying, anyways, that it's not as though Raskolnikov or people who followed that ideology later on. We know that Nietzsche was a big proponent of Dostoevsky, and it said that Hitler and other such people, Yamal Shamo, followed Nietzsche's idea of a Superman, which I think most critics will say that's not what Nietzsche meant. But it's not that they didn't have morality, it's that they had a morality of their own, right? In other words, if you would say to these people, where are you coming from? What are you talking about? No. I'm right. I know how it is. This is morality, right?
Wow, that's a very strong point that you make. And I think 2 weeks ago when we spoke about Nevi Sheker, the person who invent actually laws and sometimes maybe ideological systems, is judged so severely in Jewish law. One of the laws that we have is Zaken Mamre, a person who is a great scholar, but he stands against the entire Sanhedrin. Now, you think about it, this person is a very devoted one with a big white beard, and he knows every word in the Torah. And he decided that, everyone else is wrong and he's right. Now, if we are going to deal only with this person, we might say, well, I'm not going to disagree with such a great person who is much more knowledgeable than me. And maybe the 69 other people in the Sanhedrin are not as smart as him. But you know what? There is the power of society, the power of the wisdom of the crowd. And the people who sometimes say, no, the truth, the right path is with me and you have to listen to it, is a very dangerous one. And the Torah says clearly that if he does not accept the opinion of his friend, which are the majority, she takes it very seriously. This person is being killed by the society because he presents such a terrible alternative that might lead entire society down the cliff. And Hitler is an excellent example, and all kinds of ideologies that popped up through history just tell you that sometimes people think that they are above any other system and they can lead, as we saw in the book The Wave, the entire society to the worst places.
I just did an interview with a fellow by the name of Seamus McGraw, who wrote a book on the rise of the American mass murder, the shootings that happen in the United States on a regular basis. And essentially, his theory is that when you break down the psyche of these mass murderers, he says that, and this is endemic to the United States, he argues, is that they are narcissists. As you said before, their hubris kind of puts them above everybody else. I know best, and I know these people need to die. So it's fascinating. I think mostly is that he's arguing that the American public today is suffering from that malaise, which is a tremendous sense, an exaggerated sense of self, which allows people to do what they're doing, as an example, mass shooters.
Yeah, it's very dangerous. And you know what? If you want to expand it, you can see, especially today, radical Islam has a very similar ideology. I know what is the truth. I know what God wants. I know that you are infidel and a kufar in Arabic, like you don't accept the principle, then therefore I have no problem. It's actually a mitzvah for me to kill you and see where the world is today.
Rabbi, how does the assurance of God's presence in the Netzavim contrast with Raskolnikov's struggle with the idea of a higher power after his crime?
I think that Raskolnikov was redeemed by Sonia. Sonia certainly, although come from a very low point of prostitution and a really low life, she represent kindness, gentleness, purity in the book. And without her, Raskolnikov will not go through the process of tshuva. Certainly not. By us, I think the process is different. Because God is so immanent to every person, even when we are run away and we don't feel the presence of God in our life, God is there. He's just waiting. And what the Torah is telling us in the Parsha of Netzavim-Va'yelech is, Ki lo rachok hadavar mikem. It's not far away from you. You don't have to go to Siberia or to meet Sonia in order to make a whole change in your life. And you don't have to be like a terrible sinner and a murderer in order to feel the guilt that will pursue the change in your life. It's within you. It's within us. We have the power to stop for a second and to say, okay, what did I get here? Where do I stand? What are the results of my sin? And it's not that God is going to push you. That's exactly what is not going to happen. It has to be your choice, your reflections. But God is going to wait you and to welcome you back. So I think that the presence of God by us is in the beginning and the end, and we are just like, a band that is going away and coming back to the source, to the beginning. Over there, it has to be like a more of external source that initiate the whole process of tshuva. We see it differently, as I said. We don't need anything. It's within us. It's a moment that can change our life from one second to another.
I have always loved when we discuss the Parsha outside of Shul, Regalachas, because you always tell me such gems. I always appreciate how you look at the psukim very often in different ways than other individuals whom I would read or speak to. So I have to ask you this. Just tell me a couple of gems on the following psukim. In Netzavim 30:11, it says, right through to 30:14. For this commandment that I command you today, it is not hidden from you, as you said before, and it is not distant. It is not in heaven for you to say, who can ascend to the heaven for us and take it for us so that we can listen to it and perform it. And then the Torah says so beautifully, so literarily, nor is it across the sea for you to say, who can cross to the other side of the sea for us and take it for us so that we can listen to it and perform it. Rather, the matter is very near you. It is in your mouth and it is in your heart to perform it. What is that? Not in heaven, not across the sea. What's the Torah saying here?
I think that the Torah is talking to our heart, because the Torah knows what we think in our heart. We always think that like a change is so hard to achieve, and we have to go through mountains and through all kind of journeys. And even today, people are going to India and going to Nepal to be with monks for years, and the Torah says, stop. Don't book Air Canada to Nepal or to India. Stay there where you are, because I'm telling you, a real change can happen now at your home. You don't have to go anywhere. Because we always associate change with major decisions and moving from one place to another. Listen, I always have students come to my office. They want to change teachers. They sometimes think about leaving the school, and they say, okay, sit here. Before we think about a different school, before we think about a different teacher, let's talk a little bit about you. What is your part in all this? And you know what? Usually with a smile, with a good attitude, we come to the conclusion that the problem is not the teacher, it's not the school, it's not the administration, it's us. And it's very frightening thought, because we love to blame everyone around us for our faults. But the Torah says, no, it's not Bashamayim, it's not on the moon, it's not on the sun, it's not Ever Layam, it's within us. If we have time, I will tell you a beautiful story. Do we have time for this?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay,
yeah.
Listen to this, because sometimes the Hasidic story is a good commentary on the Torah. So there was a rabbi that the eve of Yom Kippur, he gathered these Hasidim and always told them the following story before Yom Kippur. What was the story? It was a story about a Jew living in a rural area of Czechoslovakia. And one night he had a dream that there is a treasure under the bridge that leads to the palace in Prague. I don't know if you went on this bridge. I wasn't, but there is a bridge actually leading to the old city of Prague. And he dreamed that under the bridge there is a huge treasure. And he tells it to his wife, and she said, come on, it was a dream. What do you want to do with it? And second night, he dreams about the same thing. There is a treasure waiting for him under the bridge on the river of Prague. And the third night, and he said, something must be true here. And he buy with a few pennies, he had a shovel, and he goes to Prague. He take like a horse, a caravan. He goes to Prague. The soldier, obviously.
Rabbi,
just make sure. I want to make sure. Do you hear me?
You went dark. So start at, and he goes to Prague. Prague. You hear me okay?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Yeah. Start at, and he goes to Prague.
So he goes to Prague and with his shovel, and he's very excited for the treasure. And on the bridge, he see like a soldier. Obviously, it was like the royal palace, and in every point approaching the palace, there was a soldier. So he doesn't know what to do. He's waiting for the nighttime. He takes his shovel, and lo and behold, the soldier is behind him, put his hand on his shoulder, and he said, "What are you doing here?" The Jew did not know what to say. He told him the truth. You know, sometimes we have to tell the truth. And he told him about the dream, and the soldier started to laugh. And he said, "Come on, how can you like follow your dreams? Let me tell you about the dream that I had. I had a dream about a little Jew in a village named this so and so, and I dreamed that in the house under the oven there is a huge treasure of gold." And the little Jew hear it, and he knows that he's talking about him.
That's great.
And he goes back home, and with a shovel, he like start to dig under the oven, and lo and behold, he found the treasure of gold. And at this point, the rabbi stopped the story and sent them away, ready for Yom Kippur. Now, you tell me now, what is the story? Why you prepare for Yom Kippur? I think it's for the same reason. Avrum?
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry again about it. I don't know what is
That's okay. I think it's for the same reason.
I think it's for the same reason. Sometimes we think that our treasures are awaiting us very far away, מעבר לים, beyond the seas, on the moon. We don't know that the real treasures are buried in our own house. We to make a major change in our life, to come closer to God, we don't have to go to be a monk on Nepal or in China or wherever it is. It's within our heart. We don't have to go anywhere. The treasure is under the oven, under our heart, and we can make the change without leaving our home.
It's a lovely story. Thank you for sharing that. Rabbi, in conclusion, and I have to ask you this question. There is a character in the book, Crime and Punishment, Porfiry Petrovic. He's a detective. And what he does is he somehow elicits from Raskolnikov that he's guilty. And he does it in a way which is psychological. I read a nice thing that he acts as the physical embodiment of Raskolnikov's conscience. Is there an equivalent in the Torah of this detective?
First of all, I must tell you that if you liked it, I liked his personality too, because sometimes you can achieve things without much pressure. Just use your mind,
Yes.
and you can achieve so much. And indeed, the meltdown in Raskolnikov is he does nothing. He actually initiate exactly this very point that we just discussed. Everything is happening within us, the good things and the bad things. I cannot, off my head to remember something like this playing the cards in such a sophisticated way and causing a person to reflect into himself and to cause him, like, as I say, the meltdown by playing psychologically on him.
What about Yosef? What about Joseph with his brothers?
That's a very nice example.
Could be.
Very nice example. Wow, that's a beautiful example how he plays them psychologically, because what Yosef tried to do is indeed to reveal to themselves their punishment, and he was half successful, because the Torah is telling us, this is a beautiful point, Avrum, I really love it. At a certain point on their way back to Eretz Israel, and they realize that something is going very, very wrong. They find their money inside the the sacks with the in the bags of the wheat, they say to themselves, all this is happening because we heard his cry when we sold him and we didn't listen. So indeed, he managed to bring them to kind of meltdown, recognizing how wrong they were. But he was not fully successful because it did not lead them to recognize completely their hate, their sin, and he had to reveal it to them. So, wow, that's quite parallel to the story here. I'm very impressed. It's a
Thank
very
you.
good point.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Rabbi, in conclusion, we're only a few days away from Rosh Hashanah, and it's a very challenging time to many, many people. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and then after that, Sukkot. And during this time, there's a certain heaviness that overcomes many of us. Sometimes I'll meet someone who experiences great joy as the days approach. The idea that they are allowed to speak, be introspective, to let go of so many of the things that have been bothering them, to approach individuals and ask them for forgiveness. What is this time like for you? Is it heavier? Is it lighter? Is it a time of joy? Is it a time of deep, deep introspection?
It's always heavier. I must admit this one. Obviously, I love to be with my family. But when I look backwards from a very young age, I always say, "Wow, this year I could do so much better." It's very hard for me. I think about the people that indeed I maybe hurt, and how can I repair this relationship? So when I come to Rosh Hashanah, I really feel what they say. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, although they have an element of simcha, you don't say Hallel, which is unique because every Yom Tov you do say Hallel, because in Hallel you pour your joy outside, and the Rambam say these are days of Eima Yetera. There is like excessive fear on this day because like who knew, like last Rosh Hashanah, what is going to happen only 21 days later on Simchat Torah. So you always have this element. We get older, we don't get younger. Obviously, things are happening to all of us throughout the year. We have friends, we have family, people. We think about it. I do feel the seriousness of the day. But at the same time, every time that I say Shechianu on the Kiddush of Rosh Hashanah, I said, wow, Baruch Hashem, thank you, God, for I made it. Shechianu v'kimanu v'gianu lazman hadeh. So it's a mixture of different emotions, like bittersweet emotions.
Rabbi, I love the way you constructed our shiurim so that Parsha should be learned through the lens, as we say, should be learned through the lens of classic literature. Mostly, not always, but mostly classic literature. But next week is a little bit different. Next week, we're studying Hazinu. And you came up brilliantly. I think it's lovely what you've done is we'll be learning it through the lens of Pathetique, I believe you say it, by
Pathetic,
Tchaikovsky. Is that how you say it? Pathetique.
pathetic. Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did you arrive at that?
I love going to symphonies. And you know what? Maybe it was the silliest suggestion I ever did because I'm not a musician. Unfortunately, I'm not. But I love music. You know that sometimes you are not an artist, but you admire art,
Yes.
and that's what happened to me with music. My wife was actually a fantastic piano player. She's not playing it anymore. She apparently her great concert is like raising our kids. But I learned to love music a lot through her devotion to music at the time. And we in Toronto, now she's in Avelut after her parents, but we used to go to every season to the symphony, and I just admire the whole thing. And slowly I started to read into the compositions, the life of the people who
Composers.
wrote composers exactly. Thank you for the missing word. And I started to understand that symphony with no words is sometimes so powerful and give you so much ability to think and to experience the powerful of certain ideas even or certain stories. And I think that the way it's written, the Shirah, bring something unique to the landscape of the Torah. Sometimes you need a little bit more than just words. They have to rhyme in a certain way. They have to structure it in a certain way, and they hit a chord that normally uh, through the words you are not going to hit. So I thought, you know what? Maybe for Azin we will do something interesting, and uh, we will try. I will try to give my understanding in the pathetic, which is beautifully and the melody is easier than other symphonies. We will try to delve into the world of music a little bit again with someone who is completely not an expert or pretend to be an expert. And actually, I will bring my novice approach to music in order to see why the Torah maybe wrote Adinu in a certain way, because sometimes it's more powerful than the words themselves.
I'm really excited about doing that shiur with you. I really want to understand God's thinking through your ideas about the composition of the Torah and how there are a number of different songs in the Torah. That fascinates me because on a spiritual level, on a very deep spiritual level, what does song mean? What does singing elicit? What does it do for us? But let's not deal with that now. Rabbi, you know that I've been playing a little bit with artificial intelligence, and I prompted AI today, ChatGPT, to write a poem about the Parsha and the book that we were using today, Crime and Punishment. So I'd like to read it to you. In the shadow of Sinai, the people stand tall, a covenant binding, a sacred call. Life and death whispered in the winds of fate. With every decision, they shape their own state. Raskolnikov wanders through guilt's heavy night, a murder committed, lost in this flight. In the depths of his mind, his conscience awakes. With each passing moment, his soul starts to break. Choose life, cries the Torah, a path clear and bright. While the weight of the crime dims Raskolnikov's light, community gathered, all voices entwined, yet in isolation, the murderer is blind. Moses, a leader with courage to guide, encourages strength with the Israelites bide. But Raskolnikov stumbles through shadows of dread, haunted by whispers of the blood that he shed. Forgiveness and struggle in both texts reside, the quest for redemption, the heart's aching tide. In the embrace of the law, both find their way back. Through choices of darkness and light they unpack. So stand we together with lessons to learn, from Torah's deep wisdom to Dostoevsky's turn. In the dance of the heart where choices ignite, we seek our redemption through wrongs made right. What do you think?
It's very beautiful.
It's
And as
nice.
I said last time, it's very frightening because
It is.
I wouldn't come with such a thing like in hours. And wow, he did a good job.
Whoever that he is, right?
Yeah.
Rabbi, we want to wrap things up here. I want to wish you and your family a beautiful Chag, a beautiful Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and then afterwards Sukkot. And I also want to ask you for forgiveness. I want to thank you very much for bringing to me a great amount of joy and learning. This morning, when I was just doing more research on crime and punishment, I was thinking about you. I was thinking about you. And for many, many years, as I told you before, I struggled greatly with reading classics. I just had a hard time. The words were so thick, and I would often get stymied while I was trying to go from one paragraph to another. But now I have a motivation to do so, and this is it, Parsha and Prose. So thank you so much for that. I am so grateful that you've taken me down this very healthy and beautiful road.
And I want to thank you in this opportunity because honestly, like some of these books I read so many years ago, and it gave me like a renewed interest. And I remember the day that I were so excited about reading them. Thank you for your bringing this up in me.
Absolutely. And ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to be in touch with me or with Rabbi Gomorrah, you can find me at avrum.rosensweig@gmail.com. Rabbi Gomorrah's email is at the bottom of the page. We welcome thoughts and ideas. You have to run, eh?
Yeah.
And we welcome ideas for shows, books that you've read or symphonies that you've heard. Please feel free to be in touch with us, and we will consider using your ideas in future shows, God willing. Until then, I would very much like to conclude, if you will, I would like to conclude with a blessing for the hostages. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless, preserve, and protect the captives and missing soldiers of the citizens of Israel and the Israel Defense Forces. May God rescue them from captivity and speedily restore them in peace in the merit of the prayers of this holy congregation who pray for them. May the Holy One, blessed be God, show them mercy, increase their strength, remove their pain, and send them a recovery of body and spirit. May God return them to the bosom of their family swiftly and soon. And let us all say amen.
Amen.
All right.
I have to leave, but it was wonderful to spend the time with you.
Me too, Rabbi. Until next week, we look forward to being with you. Have a beautiful week. Lots of nachas in the kinder, in the children, and really, really make every effort to learn, to study, and develop yourself. Thank you so much. Sei gesund.